This video is the first part of the complete guide to sponsor your spouse or partner to Canada. In this video, we will talk about everything you need to know on spousal sponsorship before you start the application. In the second part of the guide, we will show you how to submit the application step by step, the common mistakes to avoid and what to expect after submitting the application. Please note that the requirements and procedures for residents of Quebec is slightly different. The province of Quebec has its own immigration rules.
Who can be a sponsor?
You can sponsor your spouse or partner if you're a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident of Canada, and you are 18 years or older.
Your obligations as a sponsor.
When you agree to be a sponsor, you must sign an undertaking, promising to give financial support for the basic needs of your spouse or partner, and their dependent children. Basic needs are food, clothing, shelter and other needs for everyday living. Dental care, eye care, and other health needs that are not covered by public health services. Length of undertaking is 3 years, from the day your spouse or partner becomes a permanent resident. Length of undertaking is 10 years, from the day the dependent child of your spouse or partner under 22 years of age becomes a permanent resident, or until the child becomes 22 years old, whichever comes first. You are responsible for the basic needs of your sponsored spouse throughout the duration of the sponsorship undertaking, even if you separate or divorce during that period. Before signing the undertaking agreement, you must make sure the people you sponsor won't need to ask the government for financial help. If they receive social assistance, you'll have to pay back what they received during the time you are legally responsible for them. You won't be able to sponsor anyone else until you've repaid the amount.
Who cannot sponsor their spouse or partner?
You may not be eligible to sponsor your spouse or partner if you were sponsored by a spouse or partner and you became a permanent resident less than 5 years. You sponsored a previous spouse or partner, and this person became a permanent resident less than 3 years. You didn't pay back an immigration loan, a performance bond, or court-ordered family support payments such as alimony or child support. You didn't give the financial support you agreed to when you signed a sponsorship agreement to sponsor someone else in the past. You declared bankruptcy and are not discharged. You received social assistance for a reason other than a disability. You were convicted of a violent or sexual offense, or an offense that caused bodily harm to a relative, or you attempted or threatened to commit any of these offenses. You are in jail, prison, or a penitentiary. You are under a removal order. You are a permanent resident living outside Canada. If you're a Canadian citizen living outside Canada, you may still eligible to sponsor, if you can show that you plan to live in Canada when the persons you want to sponsor become permanent residents.
Spousal sponsorship minimum necessary income.
Canadian citizens or permanent residents, who are sponsoring their spouses or partners, are not required to provide proof of finances or meet the minimum necessary income. However, if you are not working in Canada, you need to provide proof showing that you can support the persons you are sponsoring. This must include a detailed explanation of how you plan to support yourself and the sponsored persons.
Who you can sponsor.
You can sponsor your spouse, common law partner or conjugal partner and their dependent children to Canada. Your spouse or partner can be either sex, and must be 18 years or older.
Your spouse is legally married to you.
IRCC no longer recognizes marriages performed outside of Canada by proxy, telephone, fax, internet, and other forms of marriage where one or both persons were not physically present at the ceremony.
Your common law partner isn't legally married to you.
He or she has been living with you for at least 12 consecutive months, meaning you've been living together continuously for 1 year in a conjugal relationship, without any long periods apart. Any time spent away from each other should have been short and temporary. You'll need to give proof of your common law relationship.
Your conjugal partner isn't legally married to you or in a common law relationship with you.
He or she has been in a relationship with you for at least 1 year. He or she lives outside Canada. He or she cannot live with you in their country of residence, or marry you because of significant legal and immigration reasons, such as their marital status. For example, they're still married to someone else in a country where divorce isn't possible. Or their sexual orientation, for example, you are in a same-sex relationship, and same-sex relationships are not accepted, or same-sex marriage is illegal where they live. Or persecution, for example, your relationship is between different religious groups, which is not accepted and they may be punished legally or socially. You'll need to give proof that you could not live together or get married in your conjugal partner's country. For example, proof of refused long-term stays in each other's country. If you're applying in the conjugal partner class, the person being sponsored cannot be living in Canada.
Children qualify as dependents if they meet both of these requirements. They're under 22 years old. They don't have a spouse or common law partner. Children 22 years old or older qualify as dependents if they meet both of these requirements. They have depended on their parents for financial support since before the age of 22, and they are unable to financially support themselves because of a mental or physical condition.
Criminality.
You can skip this part if it's not applicable to you.
For the sponsor.
As we mentioned earlier, you may not be able to sponsor if you were convicted of an offense of a sexual nature, a violent crime, an offense against a relative that caused bodily harm, or threatened or attempted to commit any of the above offenses, depending on the nature of the offense, how long ago it happened, and if you received a pardon. You may still be eligible to sponsor if you were convicted other types of crime.
For the person being sponsored.
Generally, people with criminal convictions are not allowed to come to Canada.
Convictions or offenses outside Canada.
If the person you're sponsoring is outside Canada and has committed or has been convicted of a crime outside Canada, they may be able to overcome this criminal inadmissibility. This section doesn't apply to anyone applying from within Canada and with a conviction or offense outside Canada. The person can apply for rehabilitation either before you submit the sponsorship application, or by submitting the rehabilitation application with your application for sponsorship. If you choose this option, IRCC will assess your eligibility as a sponsor and do the first assessment of the permanent resident application. However, IRCC will only assess the sponsored person's admissibility after they get a decision about their rehabilitation application.
Convictions or offenses in Canada.
If the person has a criminal conviction in Canada, they must ask for a record suspension, formerly a pardon, from the Parole Board of Canada before becoming admissible to Canada. You should not submit the sponsorship application until the sponsored person has his or her record suspension. You can ask for a record suspension application guide, or for more information from Parole Board of Canada. Clemency and Record Suspension Division.
Inland versus outland application.
Before submitting your application, you must choose the class of application first. There are two classes of application: family class and spouse or common law partner in Canada class. Family class is usually called outland application, and the spouse or common law partner in Canada class is usually called the inland application. If you're sponsoring your conjugal partner, you must submit an application under the family class. If you're sponsoring your spouse or common law partner, you may sponsor them under the family class, or under the spouse or common law partner in Canada class. When you submit the application, you must specify the class of application on the checklist you'll submit, as the covering page for your application package. Apply under the family class if the person you want to sponsor lives outside Canada, or the person you want to sponsor currently lives with you in Canada but doesn't plan to stay in Canada while the application is being processed. Apply under the spouse or common law partner in Canada class if your spouse or common law partner lives with you in Canada, would like to apply for an open work permit so that they can work while the application is being processed. Inland application gives the sponsored person the ability to continue living in Canada while their application for permanent residence is processed. If the applicant's temporary status document is not valid for the duration of the sponsorship processing period, they will need to apply for an extension or a new status document to maintain their legal status in Canada while their sponsorship application is being processed. For example, if you are a visitor in Canada, you can stay in Canada for up to 6 months. You need to apply for a visitor record to extend your stay until your permanent residence application is approved. Traveling abroad while an inland sponsorship application is being processed is permitted, however, it is not recommended. In the event the sponsored person is denied re-entry into Canada for whatever reason, their sponsorship application may be deemed abandoned. If this happens, they will need to submit a new outland spousal sponsorship application.
Open work permits for spouses or common law partners in Canada.
If you're applying under the spouse or common law partner in Canada class, you may qualify for an open work permit while your application for permanent residence is being processed. You can submit your application for an open work permit together with your application for permanent residence, or after you apply. An open work permit is a work permit that is not job specific, which means you can work for any employer in Canada. The open work permit is usually valid for 2 years, or until your passport expires, whichever comes first. You might also be eligible to apply for a health card with your work permit. For information on how to apply for a health card, check out the Ministry of Health website of the province you are living in.
This is the first part of the complete guide to sponsor your spouse or partner to Canada. In our next video, we will show you how to submit the application step by step.
For more information on Canadian immigration and citizenship, subscribe our channel and turn on the notification bell to be notified when any new video comes out.